Chapter 1, Introduction. Every day, without realizing it, you are influenced by dozens of subtle forces shaping your decisions, your beliefs, and even your sense of self. A colleague's suggestion at work, a friend's innocent question, a headline written to push your emotions. All of them are small nudges steering you in directions you may not have chosen consciously. Influence is not just a marketing trick or a political tool. It's the hidden language of human interaction. It explains why some people seem to effortlessly climb to positions of power, while others remain invisible, why some leaders inspire loyalty and others manipulate without detection, and why even the most skeptical minds sometimes get swayed. We live in an age where influence travels faster than ever. Social media feeds amplify emotional content. Algorithms favor attention-grabbing headlines. Leaders master the art of framing their messages for maximum impact. Yet, the basic laws of influence have not changed much since humans first began living in groups. These laws are rooted in psychology, biology, and social dynamics. They can be used to build trust and cooperation, or to exploit vulnerabilities. Understanding them is no longer optional. It's a skill for survival. This book is not a manual on how to become a manipulator, nor is it a dry academic text about persuasion. It is an exploration of how influence works, why we are drawn to powerful figures, and how to defend ourselves against manipulation. At the same time, it shows how to use influence ethically, to lead, inspire, and communicate more effectively without resorting to tricks or deceit. Throughout the chapters, you'll discover how power is gained and maintained, the psychological triggers that make us say yes, and the subtle techniques that make people comply even when they think they're acting freely. You'll see why some individuals are masters at reading emotions and steering conversations, and why others unknowingly give away control. The ultimate goal of this book is awareness. Awareness is power. Once you can see the patterns of influence around you, you gain the ability to choose your responses instead of being pushed into them. You start to notice when a salesperson is using scarcity to pressure you, when a boss is framing choices to limit your options, or when a friend's emotional appeal is a way of steering your behavior. You begin to recognize your own blind spots and biases, the very entry points that skilled influencers target. As you read, you will encounter real-life examples, psychological research, and practical insights. Some stories will show how influence can be a force for good. A teacher who sparks a student's passion, a leader who unites people during crisis, or a friend who encourages a healthier habit. Others will expose the darker side, cult leaders, toxic workplaces, political propaganda, and everyday manipulations hidden in plain sight. The contrast is important. Influence itself is neutral. It's the intent behind it that matters. In writing this book, I wanted to answer 3 core questions. First, how do people actually gain power? Not just titles or positions, but the invisible kind of power that makes others follow them willingly. Second, why do we fall for manipulations even when we think we're too smart for them? And third, how can we recognize and counteract these forces in our own lives without becoming cynical or paranoid? If you've ever walked away from a conversation wondering why you agreed to something you didn't want, if you've ever admired someone's ability to command respect without raising their voice, or if you've ever felt trapped by someone's influence but couldn't explain why, then you'll find answers here. By the end of this journey, you'll understand the hidden levers of influence and how to use them responsibly. You will be less likely to be manipulated and more capable of inspiring others without manipulation. You may even find that the very skills that once made you vulnerable become tools for your own empowerment. So let's begin. In the following chapters, we'll dive into the laws of influence, how they operate, why they're so effective, and how to see them clearly in everyday life. This knowledge will not make you immune, but it will make you far more resilient. And resilience, in a world of constant persuasion, is one of the most valuable powers you can have. Chapter 2. Power begins with perception. Long before someone has real authority, they cultivate an image of credibility, confidence, and competence. This is the first law of influence. People believe what they perceive before they verify the facts. In other words, appearance precedes reality. A person who looks, speaks, and acts as though they are in control will be treated as if they are in control, even before they've proven anything. This is why charismatic newcomers can outshine experienced veterans, and why some leaders rise seemingly from nowhere. The psychology behind this is simple but powerful. Human beings evolved in groups where quick judgments about status and trustworthiness were necessary for survival. Our ancestors didn't have time to analyze data before deciding who to follow in a crisis. They relied on cues, posture, tone of voice, confidence, decisiveness. Those instincts still live in us today. When someone enters a room with self-assurance, speaks clearly, and frames their ideas as if they're already accepted, our brains tag them as credible. We grant them more attention, more respect, and more influence, often unconsciously. This effect shows up everywhere. In job interviews, the candidate who speaks calmly and uses confident language is perceived as more competent even if their resume is weaker. In social groups, the person who tells a story with energy and certainty is believed over the hesitant one, regardless of accuracy. In business, a startup with a polished pitch deck can secure funding before it even has a working product. The appearance of power attracts power. Of course, this perception-based influence can be ethical or manipulative. A skilled communicator who genuinely knows their subject can use confidence to lead and inspire. But someone who has little expertise can use the same techniques to mislead, sell empty promises, or gain followers for harmful causes. History is full of both examples. Cult leaders, for instance, often begin by projecting an aura of certainty and wisdom, exploiting the human bias toward confidence. Meanwhile, great reformers and educators also project confidence, but they use it to build trust and bring people together around truth or progress. To understand why we fall for manipulations, we need to examine the triggers built into our perception. Confidence signals safety and authority, so we're drawn to it. Consistency signals reliability, so we're reassured by it. Scarcity signals value, so we want what's limited. All these cues are shortcuts our brains use to make quick decisions. In most cases, these shortcuts work well, they're efficient, but they can be hacked. Someone who learns to mimic these signals can gain influence without the substance to back it up. Recognizing this first law, perception precedes reality, is empowering. It explains why you've sometimes felt compelled to follow someone who later disappointed you. It also explains why you may have been overlooked despite having real competence, but lacking a confident presentation. Awareness allows you to adjust both how you respond to others and how you present yourself. When you meet someone projecting authority, pause and ask, what's the evidence behind their claims? Do they actually have the experience or knowledge they imply? Are you responding to substance or style? Even a brief moment of conscious questioning can break the automatic spell of perceived power. At the same time, consider your own influence. If you have real value to offer, skills, knowledge, ideas, you need to communicate them in a way that triggers the same perception of credibility. This is not about faking confidence or adopting a false persona. It's about aligning your presentation with your true abilities so that people can recognize your worth. Speaking clearly, making decisions instead of hesitating, and presenting your ideas with conviction can help others see the value you genuinely provide. Think of influence as a doorway. The first law, perception, is the handle. Without turning the handle, you can't even get people to step inside and evaluate what's real. If you neglect it, your message may go unheard. But if you understand it, you can open the door ethically and invite people in. In the coming chapters, we'll explore the other laws of influence, the psychological triggers that make us comply, the social dynamics that amplify authority, and the ways to protect yourself from subtle manipulation. But it all begins here with perception. Learn to see through it in others, and learn to manage it in yourself, and you've already taken your first step toward real power and away from hidden manipulation. Chapter 3. If perception opens the door to influence, trust is the lock that keeps it secure. This second law of influence could be called the law of trust and reciprocity. People are more likely to comply, follow, or agree with someone they believe has their best interests at heart. Without trust, Even the most confident leader cannot sustain influence for long. With trust, even modest authority can inspire extraordinary loyalty. Trust operates on two levels, emotional and rational. Emotionally, we want to feel safe with someone. We look for signals of honesty, warmth, and shared values. Rationally, we want evidence, past actions, consistency, and competence. When these two levels align, influence becomes natural and almost effortless. When they diverge, suspicion grows and influence collapses. This is why successful influencers, from teachers and mentors to managers and public figures, invest time in building genuine rapport before asking for action. They listen, show empathy, remember details, and offer help without immediate expectation of return. These acts create a sense of reciprocity, the human tendency to give back when we receive something of value. This tendency is so strong that it can override our better judgment. Consider how often you felt pressure to say yes after someone did you a small favor. The classic example is the free sample at a store. You taste a product for free, and even if you didn't plan to buy, you feel an impulse to reciprocate by making a purchase. In negotiations, a counterpart might offer a small concession early to create a sense of obligation. Skilled salespeople and negotiators understand this instinct deeply. They structure interactions so that you feel indebted before the real ask arrives. This mechanism isn't inherently manipulative. In fact, reciprocity is one of the foundations of social life. It builds cooperation and fairness. But when it's used deliberately to trap rather than to build, it becomes manipulation. Understanding the law of trust and reciprocity allows you to notice when someone is planting a psychological seed of obligation. Trust also amplifies messages. When a friend recommends a product, you're far more likely to try it than if you see a random advertisement. This is why influencer marketing works, why testimonials sway us, and why political campaigns emphasize endorsements. Our brains treat trusted sources as shortcuts for decision-making. We think, if they trust it, it's probably safe. This saves mental energy, but exposes us to bias. The paradox is that trust takes time to build but can be lost in an instant. Repeated inconsistency, hidden motives, or a single betrayal can destroy years of goodwill. This is why ethical influencers guard their reputation carefully. They understand that every small action either deposits or withdraws from their trust account with others. When the account is full, influence flows easily. When it's empty, no amount of persuasion will work. From the perspective of self-defense, the key is to separate the feeling of trust from the evidence of trustworthiness. Ask yourself, do I trust this person because of their track record or because of a momentary gesture? Am I feeling obligated because they truly helped me or because they engineered a situation to make me feel indebted? Pausing to ask these questions can reveal hidden manipulations. On the positive side, you can strengthen your own influence by genuinely practicing reciprocity and consistency. Offer real value before you expect anything in return. Keep your promises, even the small ones. Admit mistakes openly. These actions may seem slow compared to flashy persuasion tactics, but they create a foundation of influence that is both ethical and enduring. People may follow you at first because of perception, but they will stay with you because of trust. Imagine two leaders in a workplace. One dazzles with confident presentations, but frequently overpromises and underdelivers. The other speaks plainly, keeps commitments, and makes sure to credit others. At first, the charismatic one may attract more attention, but over time, the steady one builds a network of loyalty and credibility that outlasts the show. This is the law of trust and reciprocity in action. Perception can get you noticed. Trust will keep you respected. When you understand how reciprocity shapes decisions, you can avoid being manipulated by false favors and also wield influence with integrity. In the next chapter, we'll look at another law of influence, one that leverages belonging and identity, showing why people often conform even when they disagree inside. Chapter 4. If trust is the glue that binds influence, belonging is the magnet that pulls people into its orbit. This third law of influence could be called the law of belonging. People are powerfully motivated to align with groups and identities, sometimes even at the expense of their own preferences. Humans are social creatures. We survive, learn, and thrive in groups, and the desire to belong runs deeper than most of us admit. Skilled influencers know this, and they use it to shape behavior. Think about how often you've been swayed by what others around you are doing. At a restaurant, you might choose the dish most people at the table ordered. In a meeting, you might nod along with a popular opinion even if you're unsure. Online, you might like a post simply because it already has thousands of likes. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. Conformity once signaled safety. Blending with the tribe reduced the risk of standing out and being ostracized. In modern life, the same instinct still guides our choices. Influence built on belonging works by connecting people to something bigger than themselves. It can be a family, company, a nation, a movement, or even a niche online community. When we identify with a group, our sense of self merges with it. We start to think in terms of we rather than I. This shift makes group norms, values, and leaders far more persuasive. A statement from someone inside the group feels truer than the same statement from an outsider. Marketers use this constantly. Brands don't just sell products, they sell identities. You're not just buying shoes, you're joining a lifestyle. You're not just using a service, you're part of a community. Political strategists do the same. They frame issues to appeal to group identities rather than individual reasoning. Once a message taps into who you think you are, it bypasses critical analysis. You're no longer evaluating facts. You're protecting your identity. This law explains why people sometimes defend ideas that contradict their own interests. If their sense of self is tied to a group, rejecting the group's belief feels like rejecting themselves. It also explains why social proof, seeing others adopt something, is such a strong driver. We're wired to look at what the group is doing and adjust accordingly. Like the other laws, belonging can be a force for good or harm. At its best, it fosters teamwork, solidarity, and shared purpose. Communities built on mutual respect and values can inspire people to act bravely and selflessly. At its worst, it can fuel groupthink, blind loyalty, or even violent fanaticism. Manipulators exploit belonging by creating in-groups and out-groups, manufacturing enemies to unite followers, or rewarding conformity while punishing dissent. To defend yourself against manipulative belonging, watch for tactics that frame dissent as betrayal, or that demand loyalty before evidence. Ask yourself, am I agreeing because I believe this, or because I'm afraid of being excluded? Does this group allow healthy disagreement, or does it shame nonconformity? A group that punishes questioning may not be serving your best interests. On the flip side, if you want to lead ethically, understand that people don't just follow information, they follow identity. You can strengthen your influence by creating a sense of belonging rooted in honesty and shared purpose. Make your team feel part of something meaningful, but leave room for individuality. Encourage questions, not just agreement. That kind of belonging produces resilience rather than blind obedience. Perception gets you noticed, trust keeps people with you, and belonging binds them to a shared path. Together, these three laws form a powerful triad of influence. In the next chapter, we'll look at another force just as potent, the law of authority, why symbols of power make us comply, and how easily our respect for authority can be manipulated. Chapter 5. Authority is one of the most reliable shortcuts the human brain uses to decide what to do. When we see someone who appears to have power, expertise, or status, we instinctively defer. This is the fourth law of influence, the law of authority. People are more likely to comply with requests or believe information when it comes from someone they perceive as an authority figure. This tendency begins in childhood. Parents, teachers, and other adults shape our early sense of who knows best. Listening to them keeps us safe, teaches us skills, and maintains order. As we grow older, the instinct persists. Doctors in white coats, executives in suits, celebrities endorsing products. All these symbols of authority tap into a deep, automatic response. We assume that those who look the part know the part. Classic experiments have shown how powerful this effect can be. In one of the most famous studies of the 20th century, Volunteers were instructed by a person in a lab coat to administer what they believed were painful electric shocks to another participant. Despite their discomfort, a large majority obeyed the authorities' orders. The study revealed not that people are cruel, but that the presence of perceived authority can override moral hesitation. Modern life multiplies the symbols of authority. A verified social media account, a professional-looking website, a title, and an email signature all can create an aura of credibility. Manipulators exploit this by creating fake credentials, buying endorsements, or dressing the part. Scams often rely on impersonating authority figures, a fraudulent call from the bank, an email from a government office, or a pop-up claiming to be official. Authority also affects how we evaluate information. When a well-known expert or organization publishes a statement, we're less likely to scrutinize it than if the same claim came from an unknown source. This is efficient when the authority is genuine and competent, but dangerous when the authority is fake, biased, or corrupt. To protect yourself from manipulative authority, separate the appearance of power from the substance behind it. Ask, what is this person's actual expertise? Do they have evidence, or just a title? Am I agreeing because the claim makes sense, or because it's coming from someone impressive? Even a brief pause to examine these questions can weaken the automatic pull of authority. Ethical leaders and communicators understand this law too, but they use it differently. They don't rely only on symbols of power. They also demonstrate competence and transparency. They explain the reasoning behind their decisions, invite questions, and acknowledge uncertainty when it exists. This builds genuine authority, one rooted in trust and knowledge rather than just appearance. If you aspire to wield influence, the lesson is not to discard authority, but to earn it. Develop real expertise. Keep your word. Share your reasoning. Present yourself professionally so that your abilities are visible, but make sure the image reflects the reality. When people discover that your authority is authentic, their respect deepens and your influence becomes resilient. Authority, like perception, trust, and belonging, is neutral. It's a tool. In the right hands, it allows society to function smoothly. We rely on pilots to fly planes, doctors to diagnose illnesses, and engineers to build bridges. In the wrong hands, it can lead to blind obedience, abuse of power, and widespread harm. The more you understand it, the less likely you are to be manipulated by false authorities, and the more likely you are to become a credible one yourself. So far, we've explored perception, trust, belonging, and authority. Each law explains a piece of why people comply, follow, or believe. In the next chapter, we'll turn to another subtle but potent force, the law of scarcity, why things seem more valuable when they're limited, and how this scarcity can be manufactured to push us into action. Chapter 6. Nothing accelerates desire like the fear of missing out. This is the fifth law of influence, the law of scarcity. Things, opportunities, and even people seem more valuable when they are perceived as limited. When something feels abundant, we hesitate. When it feels scarce, we rush. Scarcity ignites urgency, and urgency overrides reflection. Skilled influencers understand this deeply and use it to move people to action before they have time to think. This bias is ancient. In environments where resources were truly limited, moving fast could mean survival. If you delayed, the food might be gone, shelter claimed, the partner chosen. Acting quickly on scarcity once had clear evolutionary benefits. Today, that same wiring is triggered not by survival but by marketing, negotiation, and social dynamics. A limited time offer flashes on a website. An event claims only a few seats left. Someone tells you everyone wants this, or this chance will never come again. Even if you suspect exaggeration, a jolt of urgency spikes inside you. Scarcity works not only with material goods, but with information, access, and relationships. A secret feels more valuable because it's restricted. An invitation-only event feels more desirable than one open to everyone. We may value a person's time more if they appear busy. Even ideas can seem more compelling when they're hidden knowledge rather than widely available. This law explains why countdown timers, exclusive memberships, And while supplies last, tactics are so effective. They push you into a mindset where losing out feels worse than gaining something new. In psychology, this is called loss aversion. The pain of loss feels stronger than the pleasure of gain. When scarcity is invoked, the threat of loss dominates your thinking. Of course, scarcity can be real. Some opportunities genuinely are rare. Some products genuinely do run out. But scarcity can also be manufactured. A retailer might limit stock artificially. A leader might withhold information to create a sense of insider status. A manipulative partner might make their availability unpredictable to keep you chasing. Recognizing when scarcity is real and when it's engineered is a crucial skill. To defend yourself against manipulative scarcity, slow down. Ask, is this truly limited or is it framed that way to push me? Would I want this if it were abundant? Would I decide differently after sleeping on it? Scarcity works best when you're rushed. Giving yourself time is the antidote. On the other hand, if you're trying to influence ethically, scarcity can still be useful. Being transparent about real limits. I only have 3 hours this week for new clients. Helps people plan and respect your time. Offering a genuinely limited product or service can create focus and commitment. The key difference is honesty. You're not creating artificial panic. You're making the reality clear. Consider 2 examples. A scam website shows a fake counter saying 47 people are viewing this item right now, and only 1 left. That's manufactured scarcity. Meanwhile, a small workshop leader can only accept 12 participants because of space. That's genuine scarcity. Both use the same principle, but only one is ethical. Scarcity interacts powerfully with the previous laws. Perception, trust, belonging, and authority all magnify its effect. If a trusted authority tells you an opportunity is scarce, you're more likely to believe it. If the scarce thing connects to your identity or your group, the pull intensifies. That's why cult leaders, exclusive clubs, and luxury brands lean on scarcity. It combines with other influence triggers to create a potent mix. Understanding the law of scarcity won't stop the feeling of urgency. The jolt is automatic, but it can give you a moment of clarity. That moment is often enough to choose deliberately rather than impulsively. And if you use this law yourself, use it to create clarity and commitment, not manipulation. When people know the real limits, they can make informed choices. With perception, trust, belonging, authority, and scarcity, you're beginning to see a pattern. Influence is not one big lever, but a network of subtle forces. In the next chapter, we'll look at another powerful law, the law of consistency and commitment, which explains why once we take a small step, we're far more likely to take a bigger one, and how this can be used to guide or trap us. Chapter 7. Once someone takes a small step, the next step becomes easier. This is the 6th law of influence, the law of consistency and commitment. People strive to act in ways that align with their previous choices, words, and self-image. Once we say yes to something minor, we're far more likely to say yes to something bigger, because changing course feels uncomfortable. Skilled influencers use this to guide behavior gradually, so that compliance seems like our own decision rather than theirs. The psychology behind this is powerful. We all want to see ourselves as consistent, rational people. If we publicly take a position or make a choice, our brain tags it as part of our identity. Later, when we're asked to take a related action, we feel a subtle pressure to align with our past self. Backing out would mean admitting we were wrong or inconsistent, and that threatens our self-image. This is why small commitments can lead to big ones. A classic experiment showed that homeowners who agreed to put a tiny, unobtrusive sign in their yard were much more likely to later accept a large, ugly billboard for the same cause. The initial commitment created an internal narrative. I'm the kind of person who supports this. From then on, refusing would feel like betraying their own identity. Marketers, negotiators, and political campaigns use this principle constantly. They start by asking for something small. Sign a petition, try a free sample, share a post. These small actions seem harmless, but each one strengthens a mental link. When a bigger ask comes later, donate money, buy the product, support the movement, compliance feels natural. You're not being persuaded anymore. You're being consistent. This mechanism isn't always sinister. In fact, it can be used to build positive habits. Committing to a single push-up a day can lead to a full fitness routine. Pledging to save a small amount each week can grow into a robust savings habit. Ethical leaders use consistency to help people grow gradually, rather than shock them with sudden demands. The danger comes when small commitments are used as traps. A manipulative person might start with a harmless request to test boundaries. Once you agree, they escalate. A cult may begin with a friendly meeting, then a volunteer event, then a financial donation, and finally extreme demands. Each step feels like your own choice, but you've been guided along a path you might have refused if shown all at once. To defend yourself, watch for patterns of escalation. Ask, if I had been presented with the full picture at the start, would I still agree? Am I continuing because I want to, or because I don't want to seem inconsistent? Pause before each new step and treat it as a fresh decision, not an automatic continuation. If you want to influence ethically, use this law transparently. Start with small commitments that genuinely benefit the other person. Show them progress. Give them the freedom to say no at each stage. When people choose to stay on a path, their commitment deepens naturally and authentically. This creates lasting change rather than coerced compliance. Consistency and commitment also interact with the previous laws. If a trusted authority asks for a small favor, you're more likely to comply. If the action is tied to your identity within a group, the pull is stronger. If scarcity is invoked, act now to secure your spot. The urgency combines with your desire to stay consistent. Understanding these overlaps helps you see influence not as isolated tricks, but as a web of psychological levers. Think of your own life. How many choices are you making because you once said yes, even if that yes no longer fits who you are? Awareness of the law of consistency gives you permission to reevaluate. It's okay to change your mind when new information appears. Consistency is valuable when it's conscious. It's dangerous when it's automatic. So far, we've covered perception, trust, belonging, authority, scarcity, and now consistency and commitment. In the next chapter, we'll explore yet another force, the law of liking, which explains why we are more easily persuaded by people we like and how likability can be cultivated or faked to gain influence. Chapter 8. If there is one mechanism that binds societies together as tightly as gravity binds planets, it is reciprocity. The sense that when someone gives to us, we must give back is ancient and nearly universal. It predates formal laws, religions, and governments. In fact, many anthropologists argue that the entire structure of human cooperation emerged from this principle. Tribes sharing food, clans exchanging daughters in marriage, neighbors lending tools. Reciprocity is what allows trust to exist between strangers and what keeps communities from descending into chaos. But because it is so deeply ingrained, it is also one of the most powerful tools of influence and one of the easiest to exploit. Marketers know this when they hand you a free sample at the supermarket. That morsel of cheese is not merely a taste. It is a hook into your subconscious. You did not ask for it, but once it's in your hand, part of you feels indebted. They gave me something. I should buy, whispers an inner voice. This feeling of obligation can be astonishingly strong. In one classic experiment, people who received a small, unsolicited gift bought more raffle tickets than those who received nothing, even though they didn't particularly like the person selling them. The gift created a debt, and the debt had to be repaid. The dark side of reciprocity appears in social relationships too. Someone may do you a favor not out of kindness, but as a calculated investment. They create a ledger in your mind, a sense that you now owe them. Later, they call in the debt, maybe for something far more significant than what they gave. This is how manipulators entangle their targets. A ride offered when your car breaks down, a small introduction to a potential employer, a lunch paid for without you asking. Each act appears generous, but is actually a chess move, positioning you for a future checkmate. This law does not only operate between individuals. Nations and corporations exploit it as well. A country might send humanitarian aid to another, But behind the trucks of food is the silent expectation of political loyalty. A business might sponsor a charitable event, but later use that goodwill to negotiate favorable regulations. Reciprocity is the invisible currency of influence at every scale. The challenge is that refusing a gift or favor can feel awkward or even rude. Our cultures teach us to accept kindness graciously. Yet awareness is your first defense. When someone gives you something unexpectedly, pause and ask yourself, what strings might be attached? Not every gesture hides an agenda, but enough of them do to warrant caution. Just as you would examine a contract before signing, examine the context of a favor before accepting it unquestioningly. It's also crucial to understand that reciprocity is not inherently bad. In fact, it's the glue that holds real friendships, marriages, and alliances together. Mutual giving and receiving create balance and trust. The problem emerges when the balance is intentionally tilted, when one party uses the principle as a lever rather than as a bond. Think of the difference between a friend who helps you move because you once helped them, and a manipulative coworker who bails you out of a problem just to later demand your silence about their misconduct. The first is healthy reciprocity. The second is coercion disguised as kindness. One way to protect yourself is to keep a mental distinction between gifts and transactions. When someone gives you something, ask whether you would have sought it out yourself. If not, be cautious. Another is to practice conscious gratitude without automatic obligation. You can thank someone warmly, even sincerely, without feeling you must reciprocate on their terms. This small mental shift can neutralize many manipulation attempts. Finally, there's a positive lesson in the law of reciprocity for anyone who wants to build ethical influence. When you give without strings, when you help without keeping score, you activate the same psychological mechanism, but in a way that creates goodwill instead of guilt. People feel drawn to those who contribute generously without expectation. Over time, they reciprocate not out of compulsion, but out of genuine respect and loyalty. This is how leaders build followings that last, not by trapping people in invisible chains of obligation, but by weaving bonds of trust. Reciprocity is powerful because it's invisible most of the time. It operates below the level of conscious thought, in the quiet circuitry of fairness, gratitude, and debt that evolved to keep us cooperative. To ignore it is to be vulnerable. To understand it is to reclaim your freedom. In the hands of a manipulator, reciprocity is a trap. In the hands of an ethical influencer, it is a bridge. The difference lies in intent and in your awareness of the game being played. Chapter 9. Nothing catches our attention like something we're told we can't have. From the time we are children, forbidden toys, secret places, or the last cookie in the jar exert a magnetic pull. As adults, this tendency does not fade, it deepens. Scarcity signals value. If a thing is rare, hard to get, or about to disappear, our brains interpret it as more desirable. This is not simply a cultural quirk, it is a survival instinct. In environments where resources are limited, those who act quickly to secure them survive. That ancient wiring is still firing when you see the words limited edition on a product or when a website warns, only 2 left at this price. Influencers, marketers, and manipulators know exactly how to trigger this instinct. They build urgency into their offers. They manufacture exclusivity. They whisper about members-only access. A hotel booking site shows 5 people are viewing this room right now, not because it's necessarily true, but because it provokes you to act before thinking. Real estate agents schedule open houses with overlapping times so potential buyers see one another and feel competition. Even relationships are affected. Someone who seems hard to reach or perpetually busy can appear more attractive than someone who is readily available. Scarcity amplifies allure. The power of scarcity also shapes how groups behave. Political movements, secret societies, and elite clubs all use restricted access as a form of social capital. The fewer people who are in, the more others long to join. Even when the thing itself may not be inherently valuable, the fact that it's exclusive can create value in our minds. This is why luxury brands destroy unsold stock instead of discounting it. Abundance would dilute the illusion of rarity. By keeping supply low, They keep desire high. But like all laws of influence, scarcity can be a trap. Limited time offers often aren't truly limited. Exclusive groups may offer nothing but status gains. The rush of wanting something before it's gone can lead you to make decisions you would never make in a calmer state. Recognizing this pattern is crucial. Ask yourself, would I want this if it were plentiful? Would I feel the same excitement if the deadline didn't exist? If the answer is no, then scarcity, not genuine value, is driving your decision. Scarcity also distorts our perception of loss. We fear losing an opportunity more than we enjoy gaining one. This loss aversion can push us into irrational choices. You might buy a ticket to a concert you don't care about simply because only a few seats remain. You might stay in a relationship not because it fulfills you, but because you fear never finding another partner as seemingly rare. Manipulators exploit this fear by framing options as fleeting, by saying this is your only chance, or someone else is already interested. These statements bypass reason and go straight to the survival brain. There is, however, a constructive way to use the law of scarcity ethically. Leaders who value their time create healthy boundaries. They are selective not to manipulate, but to preserve quality and focus. An artist may limit editions of their work to maintain craftsmanship. A teacher may restrict class sizes to give each student better attention. In these cases, scarcity reflects genuine limitation or care, not manipulation. People still respond with heightened interest, but the scarcity is real and fair. To defend yourself, practice slowing down your decisions in moments of perceived scarcity. Take a breath, step back, and remember that very few opportunities are truly unique. Another offer, another chance, another door will almost always appear. This mental pause breaks the urgency spell. Also, remind yourself that your worth is not determined by access to rare things or exclusive circles. True influence comes not from chasing what is withheld, but from cultivating discernment about what genuinely matters. The law of scarcity is like fire. It can cook your food or burn down your house. It can help leaders focus and creators maintain standards, or it can be wielded as a weapon to pressure, seduce, and trap. Understanding its pull allows you to enjoy rare things without being ruled by them. In a world filled with countdown clocks, flash sales, and last-chance invitations, the ability to see through manufactured scarcity is itself a rare power. Chapter 10. By now you've walked through the main corridors of influence: authority, social proof, reciprocity, scarcity, framing, and more. And you've seen how these forces work both in the open and behind the scenes. They are not inventions of marketers or politicians. They are part of the human operating system. We evolved to respect leaders, to follow the group, to repay favors, to value what is rare. These reflexes kept our ancestors alive in small, dangerous communities. Today, they still shape our decisions. Only now the predators are often subtle manipulators rather than wild animals. The central lesson of this book is not paranoia. It's awareness. Influence itself is not evil. In fact, without it, we couldn't cooperate, persuade, or lead. Families, teams, movements, and entire societies run on influence. The difference between healthy influence and manipulation is intent and transparency. Healthy influence guides and informs. Manipulation coerces and conceals. The same principle that inspires someone to volunteer can be twisted to push someone into a scam. The same scarcity that preserves craftsmanship can be manufactured to spark panic. The same reciprocity that builds friendships can be weaponized into guilt. Awareness gives you the power to pause. When someone exudes confidence or status, you can ask, is this true authority or just a costume? When a crowd seems unanimous, you can wonder, am I seeing a real consensus or an orchestrated show? When you receive a gift, you can feel gratitude without automatic obligation. When you're told last chance, you can breathe and decide whether the offer is worth it. These small moments of reflection are acts of freedom. They don't make you immune to influence, no one is, but they make you a participant rather than a puppet. The other half of the lesson is about wielding influence yourself. Understanding these laws allows you to lead more effectively, to communicate more persuasively, to build trust and loyalty without manipulation. Ethical influence is generous. It reveals its intent. It respects the autonomy of the other person. It uses the same principles: authority, social proof, reciprocity, scarcity, but anchored in honesty and mutual benefit. A leader who shares knowledge freely, who models behavior instead of merely commanding it, who limits access because of quality rather than power games, becomes someone people follow willingly, not grudgingly. If you want to gain real power, start by earning trust. Trust is slow to build, quick to lose, and impossible to fake for long. People may be tricked once, but they rarely forget how they felt. Over time, manipulative tactics burn bridges, while authentic influence builds them. The most effective influencers are not those who master tricks, but those who master themselves. Their intentions, their patience, their capacity to give without expecting, to lead without dominating, to persuade without deceiving. The hidden secret running through all the chapters is this: every law of influence is first a law of human nature. To resist manipulation, know yourself. Notice when you crave approval, when you fear missing out, when you want to repay a favor, when you're swayed by appearances. Self-awareness weakens the hooks others can use. At the same time, self-awareness strengthens your own ability to influence ethically, because you know the terrain from the inside. Influence is inevitable. Manipulation is optional. You can't stop people from trying to persuade you. You can't stop every ad, every pitch, every subtle pressure. But you can stop living on autopilot. You can step off the conveyor belt of reflex and into the practice of conscious choice. That is the real power you gain by understanding these laws. You begin to see the strings others pull, and you realize you're holding your own. In the end, the laws of influence are not chains, but tools. Tools can build or destroy. They can enslave or liberate. By learning how they work, you're no longer just a subject of persuasion, but an architect of it. The next time someone tries to sway you with confidence, consensus, gifts, or urgency, remember, the power was always partly yours. Now you know how to use it. End of book.